The reason I invited you here today is I get a lot of questions as a leader of the medical devices group on LinkedIn. It has 360,000 members worldwide. Uh, Often questions about pain and pain management. And over the 10 years that I've been leading the group, I've had, I don't know, maybe a dozen entrepreneurs come to me and ask, because my real job is as a marketing professional, I specialize in strategy and communication for medical devices exclusively. And they say, I've got this direct to consumer product and it really helps alleviate pain. One of my first friends, back, I guess, 9, 10 years ago now, had a device for back support. And his price point, and I said, Rick, that looks great and send me one and everything, but there's a lot of products out there for pain. Why should I believe? Everyone claims to be helping with pain. So I'm going to just for a moment share your home screen with the audience and talk to us a little bit about Sam, your background, and what brought you to helm this growing company.
Well, Joe, appreciate it. So yeah, pain is a big issue, right? And it's a very generic term. There's pain from soft tissue injuries, there's pain from chronic diseases, there's pain from cancer. So it gets looped into this big category, and it can be very, very challenging actually to triage what's what. So we don't really see ourselves as a pain technology. So what Sam actually evolved over the last 20 years out of my graduate work at Cornell. So my background, I have a PhD in neurobiology and biomedical engineering, and I was studying this field called mechanobiology, which there's two fields. There's pharmacology, which is using drugs to perturb disease states, and then mechanobiology is using mechanical gradients to change perturbed disease states. So SAM is what's called a mechanobiological. It's the first FDA-approved multi-hour long-duration ultrasound device. So traditionally, ultrasound was applied in the physical therapy setting for ultrasonic diathermy. When the energy is absorbed into tissue, it creates sort of a heating sensation, and heating creates vasodilatory effects, and there's also some increased transport kinetics. It was used for short durations, once a week for 5 or 10 minutes, delivering a very low dose of energy. And what SAM is, it still operates under the sort of the similar parameters, the same frequency, the same dosing, but instead of just doing it for 5 or 10 minutes, it actually works for multiple hours on tissue to stimulate soft tissue repair, stimulate increased circulation, and stimulate increased mass transfer. And as we know, from natural biology, you can't do a single treatment and expect something to impact the body. Just like if you have an ear infection, you're not going to take one antibiotic and think your ear infection is going to go away. You got to continue your series. And like right there, it takes months to heal these things. So SAM works with the body's natural healing cascade, 4 to 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, to really amplify your body's capability. And in some cases, patients who stagnate in their healing cascade can actually use SAM to reinvigorate it and resolve the underlying condition. And then in other cases, if you're like a professional athlete or you work for a special operations command, you're always injuring your body. You get a rotator cuff partial tear or a hamstring injury. SAM's now is literally prescribed immediately when, even if there's an about or an acute injury for professional and collegiate and military patients, it's kind of the go-to treatment now because it's non-narcotic, it's localized, and it upregulates your healing. So I guess back to pain, one of the kind of cool features about SAM is when you alleviate inflammation, when you stimulate remodeling, guess what happens? Your body heals, and then the inflammatory cascade, creating the pain, gets dissipated. So we, in our clinical trials, and this has been now, the U.S. government has really invested a lot of federal research dollars into SAM. We're really blessed by that. There's been millions and millions of dollars from the National Institutes of Health, Department of Defense, NASA, pretty much every federal institute has invested in clinical studies with various universities. We look at not only, a return to work or improved function, but also pain as a secondary measure, because when you, resolve inflammation or resolve a tendinopathy, the patient's response is improved mobility, improved range of motion, better grip strength, and then obviously pain relief. So hopefully that explains a little bit about what we're doing. And the acronym, which is kind of a cool acronym. It's caught on in the literature now, is SAM. And SAM stands for Sustained Acoustic Medicine, the only multi-hour long duration mechanobiologic to, again, it literally targets a region about the size of a grapefruit, and it activates that region in your body. So whether it's a knee or a shoulder, a herniation, it works locally versus systemically like a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory or opioid.
First, thank you for that. I'm in basically none of the fields you just described, so some of it went through me, but I got the gist. And I was having a conversation yesterday with a team member who's on the call, and she works in lasers, and she targets chiropractors. And we were talking about how does she make any progress selling her lasers into chiropractic offices. She was telling me about a show that she attended, and a chiropractor came by, she gave him a treatment, and I was coaching her, like, what would you say to this chiropractor to engage him? And I said, why don't you ask him if the treatment helped? Did it work at all? And she said, well, it might have given him some relief, but you have to come lots of times before you see a sustained kind of benefit.
Mm.
And I said, well, he's going to need some kind of proof or evidence for himself. And yes, there's literature and the like, but if you can't materially demonstrate its efficacy when you're talking with someone and letting them try it, does that help or hurt your ability to be able to close the sale? Given what you shared and being somewhat familiar with electrotherapy, I've sampled products people have sent me, for mental health. You put the clips on your ear, or you put the TMS, and you're trying, these type of things, and you don't see the result right away. I'm curious about how you talk with patients and how you talk with practitioners. Chicken and egg, how do you get them to try? How do you get them to prescribe? How do you get patient adherence? There's a whole dynamic here that I think is very relevant and interesting for the folks on the call.
Yeah, it's well, healthcare changes slowly too, right? So any innovation, I saw a report out of I think it was University of Minnesota, a thought leader there. It says to shift healthcare and medicine with new technologies about a 17-year initiative on average. So that's we got our first FDA approval in 2013. So we're about almost 10 years into it. So not quite there with the full shift. But back to your question, it's interesting. And when I say it's interesting, we've built, we're a science-backed company. So I've been leading this initiative for years now, and we've been building more clinical evidence, more clinical data. We actually thought, you build just the randomized placebo-controlled studies to show efficacy. That was the pathway to adoption. Well, that's not true. You need those. That's a sort of a check mark in the equation. You need the double-blind RCTs, but that moves you on to, okay, in these really well-controlled clinical trials, how does it actually work in the real world with my patients? So then we moved on to what's called the real-world outcome study. So we have masses of data coming in from the field with doctors prescribing this device, using it, and that they do case reports, data series, and that all gets pooled, and then researchers sort of publish, this is the real-world outcome. Very similar to what happened with the vaccine studies that we all are aware about, right? They did the RCTs, and then they did real-world data, and they're just still reporting it. We're all kind of guinea pigs right now, whether we like it or not. I'm vaccinated. I'm a guinea pig for Pfizer with my real-world data now. As I don't know if you're vaccinated yet, but all right. So you're a guinea pig.
I'm a Moderna man myself.
Yeah. So you have the which the doctors actually seem to, and the healthcare community seems to actually appreciate more the real-world studies than the RCTs, because the RCTs are very much controlled, and the real-world data becomes sort of proof concepts that this can actually work in the real world. The chicken and the egg thing, though, is with the insurance carriers paying for it. So you have the doctors seeing the benefit, but then this really goes into the health economics of the technology. So I'm not sure if in the past you've had people talk about it, but for us as a company with SAM, we not only had to do the RCTs, then the real world outcome studies, we also published and done studies on the health economics of the cost savings associated with the technology. And we learned a lot about what's called ICER values, incremental cost effectiveness ratios, demonstrating that, the patient continuum in the care pathway, if they get a SAM treatment versus they get like an NSAID or an opioid, the long-term ramifications, the long-term costs, there's actually quite a bit of not only improved clinical outcome, but there's improved cost savings for the payers. So that's another check mark. And it's not the secret recipe, but RCTs, real world outcome studies, cost effectiveness, just and this was actually a survey of medical professionals with their confidence in using the SAM technology to heal injuries. And this was literally just a survey of professional athletic trainers, one of our largest prescribing populations. Athletic trainers are kind of the frontline healthcare workers for a lot of sports-related injuries. So they were surveyed. They had a built, increased confidence of about 87% that SAM would help return their athletes back to work and heal them more quickly than traditional care. You have sort of the survey concept. So now you have medical policy being created by these societies. You have the clinical studies, et cetera. Full circle now. So you have this big dossier of clinical evidence and healthcare providers saying we want it. But now you have a new doctor. Let's say, Joe, you're a new doctor who's never experienced this technology. How do you trust just all this research, or do you want to try it for yourself? So what ends up happening is a doctor typically will prescribe it, get some experience with it, actually do one or two, see how their patient responds. They might do peer-to-peer with another provider that's within their network that they trust, another professor at Miami or Duke, et cetera, who uses the technology, track it on their patient, see how their patient does, and then everyone has to get their own sort of success with it before they really buy into really just sort of using it as a standard of care. So it's a long process, and you just got to slowly educate and get healthcare providers confident in the technology, confident in the treatment, and confident that their patient is going to respond to it. And I guess last thing here is we're not an inexpensive product. So the SAM device is around $6,000, through the healthcare system. So it really needs to provide, it can't be a gimmicky, slap this on your back and you have pain relief. It's really working as a mechanobiologic to really provide value to the healthcare system. And that's why we've done so much research and science on it, because it's something that I hope eventually, it would, totally funny side story. So one of our marketing companies, you said you're a communications guy and you do marketing.
I do.
Turns out our web developer for the new website that went live, we contracted with the company. He actually got our SAM device prescribed and he used it. And he didn't even realize that he was doing the new website for a product that he used. So we've treated about 500,000 people here in the United States now. So you're starting to just meet people on the street every so often that's actually used a product that evolved, out of the lab now. And that's kind of pretty exciting as a medtech entrepreneur.
I have to say, free counsel, so at least put as much value in it as how much you pay for it. That's serious social proof. 500,000. I would see that on your homepage, like right above the fold.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
Yeah.
Because right now, this looks like a lot of, it doesn't look like a lot of sites, but I've seen lots of devices that have sensor looking things, and I'm like, that's significant. So you might consider that.
I think one of our biggest challenges as a company is people look at the SAM device and they think it's like a bone growth stimulator, or they think it's a TENS device because it has that kind of look.
Yeah.
But literally, it established a brand new product category with the Food and Drug Administration, and it's the only device in the category. So yeah, we're always trying to improve our positioning and education. And realistically, we spend tons of time every day doing CME credit, medical education on the product. And even this opportunity we appreciate to share with the network so more people understand what we're doing. We're not a laser, so SAM's not, it's ultrasound, right? It's not a laser or light, it's not electromagnetic, it's not a stimulate, it's actually in a whole different category of radiation called acoustic radiation, which is non-ionizing, but it's quite different than anything else available in the US marketplace or the globe.
Okay, well, this wasn't my intent when I sought you, but maybe we should talk. Because, one of the things that I advise my clients is to record yourself all the time, because you never know when you're going to say something smart. Now, as it happens with you, you said a lot of things smart, so maybe the incidence is higher than it is with me. But every once in a while, I'm on a call and I'm like, oh, That was good. I wish you just spun a lot of really interesting copy that I would bet is not on your site.
Okay.
In fact, you might even post this conversation later because it's a conversation as opposed to,
Exactly. Yeah.
and the questions that I'm asking, and one of the reasons I typically prepare as poorly as I do for interviews is because I anticipate that no one on the call is prepared either. And so the questions that I have are very similar to, well, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. So what does that even mean? And I ask those, and it helps people come along. I invited Dwayne on because he just shared a comment that I'd like him to share with you. Dwayne?
George, really cool. I just, again, like spur of the moment, I talked to Dr. Talia Moran Schatz this morning, and she studied under Daniel Kahneman, if you're familiar with who he is.
I'm not.
He won a Nobel Prize for behavioral economics. So Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, they're famous psychologists. Anyways, she's a psychologist as well. She specializes in healthcare and how patients see products and how doctors see products. And there's a book called Thinking Fast and Slow written by Daniel Kahneman, and essentially taking that thought process and applying it to healthcare and how you sell to patients, but not only patients, but doctors as well. It's a fascinating book, but you should really talk to her. I can make an introduction. I think she can help with a lot of kind of what you're going through. Obviously Joe can as well, but just from like the psychology standpoint, it's pretty fascinating. So anyways, I wanted to say that if you'd like me to make an introduction, I can.
Yeah, no, on the comment on that, we're always, that'd be wonderful, first off. What we learned, this happened about 2 years ago. So we made our product available. So we started providing education to patients, and the demand was absolutely insane. We couldn't handle it. And the healthcare system wasn't ready for it because all these doctors the patients were going to their doctor. It's like those pharmaceutical commercials you see on TV. Go talk to your doctor to learn about AstraZeneca or whatever. So we did something similar about SAM. This is the research. It's funded by the NIH. We were on the National Institutes of Pain website. All these patients went to their doctors, and the doctors were like, I don't know what this is. So it was kind of, it created a weird disruption where we had this huge demand, but the healthcare system wasn't ready to provide for that demand. So there is a whole psychological component to it, and I would love to, talk to this person. It'd be great.
Everything in an egg, and that kind of thing scares the bejesus out of me as a marketer, as thinking about strategy. And you've been doing this for 20, how many years?
Yeah, long time. So I grew up doing ultrasound. So my dad and I was a lab rat as a kid when I was like 5, building ultrasound systems and doing
I'm
soldering.
sorry. Did you say that you were building ultrasound systems when you were 5?
I was, yes. Just like my daughter is now soldering and she's 5. I was doing the exact same thing with my dad. And I subsequently did my undergrad in ultrasound and my PhD in ultrasound, and then founded ZetrOz out of that.
My kids are playing Minecraft right now, and I'm wondering if you're up for considering adopting my children. I don't know if that's in your consideration set right now.
Soldering is actually really fun. You're using high temperature fluxes and metals, and putting things together and making them light up.
It smells.
Yeah. So,
Jose, you have something more intelligent than I.
Yeah, no, that's music to my ears. Not quite 5, but I probably started soldering around 12 or 13, and I agree.
There
there's
you go, right?
Nostalgia that comes when I smell solder these days.
Tell the gentleman what you do for a living.
Yeah, this is really cool, George. Yeah, I run a product development firm. We specialize in connected wireless medical devices. And I have a couple questions for you. One of them was, is it the University of Miami, or is it University of Miami, Ohio, or which University of Miami?
No, I was a Florida boy. So I grew up in Massachusetts, and I was the baby in my family. And I was very fortunate that my parents said, wherever you get in, we'll make sure you can go, whether we're taking out loans or whatever. And I was fortunate I got a scholarship down there. And I said, see ya, I'm out. So I went down to Miami. I studied biomedical engineering by sitting by a pool. And it was just a wonderful experience. If you're going to study, if you can study under palm trees, it's like, it was nice.
Jose,
I'm like the other way around. What's that?
Remind us, where do you
Yeah,
live?
so I grew up in South Florida. I live in Orlando now, but I actually I'm like the opposite of you. I went to school at University of Florida, but then I did my doctorate at MIT. So I spent time in Massachusetts, and all 3 of my kids were born there. So we were geographically changing places there. Cool. So my question for you was, on the ultrasound piece, I mean, you've kind of described it as being very similar to other types of ultrasound devices, but the way that you use the technology with extended therapies, is different. But is there something on the technology front that's uniquely different, or is it more the dosing and the form factor that you guys ended up putting together?
Great question. So now I'm going to really dork out because back to MIT, I used to do what's called the summer biooptics internship with Harvard, HST, and MIT. So every summer I was on the campus over there, which was just awesome. And I created a great relationship with Robert Langer, which he's a Cornell alum, and I was working with his labs. We did the first ultrasonic pill. So to give you context, when I was in the lab at Cornell as a graduate student, I wanted to do ultrasonic research. I had this great presidential fellowship that covered my entire, PhD in it, but research costs money. So my advisor at the time was like, I'm not paying, giving you $30,000 to buy this piece of hardware. So I was in the lab trying to design my own piece of hardware, and I actually electrocuted myself pretty bad. I got thrown back and found myself in an ambulance, getting my EKG and all that test. And my girlfriend at the time thought I was crazy, but I really electrocuted myself bad trying to build a high voltage amplifier.
Did she leave you, or did you marry her?
Yeah, she was the first test specimen for Sam. So no, we're married now. But yeah, so digressing, the technology is based off of ultra low impedance circuit design. So we instead of using high voltages, I use now high currents and low voltage off of batteries. So all of our ultrasound systems are designed with 3.7 volt lithium polymer battery packs. That voltage is directly coupled to the ultrasonic transducer resonators, and it all operates at what's called low electrical impedance and also low mechanical impedances. That allows us to build these devices to be very, very efficient, operate at low voltage, be battery powered. And the cool thing about the technology are these low impedance ultrasonic resonators. So they're able to oscillate and produce high ultrasonic dose outputs with their resistivity is like 0.1 ohms. So with the 3.7 volt power voltage, you can get a lot of current into it. So the technology itself allows for miniaturization. The device is really intelligent. The transducers are very, very efficient. There's some autonomous treatment loops inside the device that self-regulate the treatment, so it can deliver that high dosing, but without preventing any sort of thermal injury to the patient. And then the other cool feature or innovation that we've developed is this ultrasonic coupling pad. So to actually couple ultrasound energy into the body for multiple hours a day is not trivial. Usually we have this specially formulated high viscosity gel that's embedded within this patch, and it all integrates to deliver the closed treatment loop and deliver the therapy effectively. And then we've partnered now with the National Institutes of Aging on, we're bringing to market a sonophoresis technology. So it actually merges the SAM with a topical NSAID to provide additional pain relief for patients, just to make it even that level of superiority to other commercial products. And all in, I think we have around 46 to 50 patents across the globe on the utility, treatment algorithms, the design, and trademark. So it's been a major undertaking for the last 15, 20 years.
If I just let me quickly insert, just another reason I love these calls so much is because I hear you talk and I'm like, what about the marketing implication? What about the this and that? And he comes in and you guys start geeking out on shit that goes way over my head. I mean, we have all of the functions here and it really makes it entertaining. Jose, go ahead and ask him something I won't understand.
Yeah, no. This one actually kind of ties back into the business side of that. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of core innovation there that is applicable to other ultrasound systems. And I'm curious, I mean, is it that it was really, that's really particular to this application, or is it like, hey, you can go to, I don't know, Butterfly Networks or like one of these other ultrasound companies that are making, a lot of waves and license that technology, or maybe you already are. Just curious, is it kind of unique to this product, or is it, the sort of thing where you could be licensing this and generating more revenue on the licenses than on the application?
Yeah, so amazing question. So we saw it early on. So again, graduate student coming out of the lab with a bunch of the best advisors. Yeah, I had people from Welch Allen, people from Procter and Gamble, people from the cosmetic industry and Unilever. I had all these cool advisors say, hey, use it for cosmetic purposes. Hey, use it for food processing, because fundamentally it's a low cost, high efficiency way of generating ultrasound, and we package that into this technology. I'm a biomedical engineer. I got my degrees because I wanted to help humanity from a human health standpoint. So my focus and laser vision has always been on medical products, but there is a huge opportunity for non-destructive testing, man, what's cool about ultrasound, right? It's used everywhere. You can put it on bridges to look for cracks. Our devices could be wireless devices that deliver those types of shock waves to measure marijuana growing. All right, a lot of these new facilities that they grow plants in these like water baths. I forgot there's a certain terminology for it. Ultrasound increases transport kinetics, the roots, so you can actually have these to help plants grow more quickly. The same sort of physical properties that we learned about. So our SAM device creates what's called a convection in tissue. It actually stimulates mass transfer of nutrients into tissue that the body can otherwise not do by itself. That same thing happens on roots of trees or other areas. So you can imagine if you want to enhance transport kinetics, whether you're healing a tissue or growing something, you could use our technology. So there's a lot of other areas, but man, as a small company and trying to lead a medical device company, just staying focused is so important. I mean, right now, our team is small. We're probably under 30 or 40, core members. And then we service about over 500 people who sell our product in the field. So that's just, that's being laser focused. It gets, it balloons out very quickly. But back to your question. Yeah, I mean, the innovation, the technology itself could be licensed for a number of applications.
Eddie, why don't you speak next as a fellow CEO of a medical device company, and you had an engineering kind of question for him as well. You're on mute.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ed Lin. I'm an anesthesiologist who ran out of gas and became an inventor instead. No, I'm kidding. The question that I have for George is, have you considered using Bluetooth to selectively control the terminals, each of the terminals, so you don't have to have wires? I have a set of Bluetooth earbuds, and I use them only one at a time because they're constantly falling out. Within a day of my first one, I already lost one. So I only activate one of them, but it doesn't seem like it would be difficult to design your device so that it will activate one at a time or simultaneously and in different rhythms and be rid of the wires.
Yeah, definitely possible, definitely doable. Yeah, we have some great innovation coming out. So stay tuned, keep an eye on our product. What we did learn early on in commercialization is people don't read instructions, and when it comes out of the box, it better be ready to go. Because early on, it was funny, we were going through all of our old product packaging configurations of our SAM technology, and we used to keep all the parts, components separately in nice little bags, all quality approved. And people would get their SAM kit and be like, what do I do? And our customer service hotline was like always talking about just people trying to get set up. So now everything comes in the box, literally you just attach the pad and put it on and you're ready to go. And we've shied a little bit away from integrating with phones or apps and things, just because it's another stress on the patient. And a lot of our patients, pretty much our biggest patient population right now is geriatric patients through the Veterans Health Administration, and just geriatric patients dealing with like joint arthritis and pain. They want to halt the inflammatory cascade. So having a little app control isn't really what our patients are demanding. They're demanding more rapid acting pain relief and longer treatment times. So we try to listen to we do voice of a customer all the time, taking their feedback and improving our product.
You have to integrate it with the flip phone and call it the Jitterbug 3 or 2 or whatever is the case.
Okay. Once he starts going down, he's just, in fact, I'm putting you back in the audience unless you have.
Just one moment. I got one more question for George, if I may. George, so what efforts are you making and what success have you had in getting third-party payers to recognize that this offers real value and reimburse for it?
Yeah, another good question. So it is a long journey, and it goes back, Ed, to the getting all of those various clinical pillars checked. So the FDA approval was not enough, right? You have to have the FDA approval. Then we had to do the double-blind RCTs, which were kind of in parallel with the FDA approval because we had to do studies to demonstrate safety and efficacy. We're just in the process of actually being a little bit broader insurance market. So we have the military health insurance covering it, veteran health insurance. Most workplace injury environments cover it. And then, professional and college athletics, sports-related injuries cover it. And we're working on, establishing this broader audience for Medicare beneficiaries and people like you and I who might be going to Anthem or Blue Cross. to demonstrate the value. And the value really goes into the health economics for the payers. So it's kind of demonstrating that, hey, this isn't a cheap piece of hardware. It's not a TENS device. It's not a light device. It's a mechanobiologic. It's used to treat disease states. It's gonna, reduce the need for opioids and pain management, but more importantly, it's gonna improve utility and quality of life. And this is why you're investing in this piece of equipment for the your patient. So there are, what's the word? There's a medical treatment plan that's associated with the SAM. It's not just like, here's your prescription, go get it. They need to document why it's appropriate for the patient, because it is a investment on behalf of the patient and the insurance carrier. But it's growing, and we're extending lives covered pretty much every day with new contracts with the payers.
So have you gotten?
Dwayne, you may have had your question squarely asked by Ed. It was similar. Do you have something, an angle or something you'd like to add, or are you all set?
Give me 1 second. I needed to find something real quick because there was something on reimbursement as well, but I got to find the guy's name.
Okay, while we're waiting for that,
Yeah.
George, were you able to get a de novo classification from the FDA for this new class of device?
Yeah, it was actually classified into, they opened up a product category, which was called PFW. So it was like a pseudo de novo process for us, even though we didn't go in that way. And when we got our first approval, it was for prescription use administered and monitored by the licensed healthcare practitioner, kind of in-office use. And then in May of 2020, we got our specific home use indication for SAM. So now SAM's the only multi-hour long-duration home use ultrasound device. And our team, the Food and Drug Administration did a great job working with our team to demonstrate the safety and efficacy, build the confidence in the treatment. Yeah, as of May of 2020, this can literally go directly to the patient's home. Right out of the box. It's amazing that the box and the instructions for use, plus the online training portals we have for patients, make it just a really seamless transition from the doctor prescribing it to the patient actually using effectively and getting improved health with the treatment.
I'm not sure she has anything to add here, but my favorite packaging engineer, Jan Gates, is on the call, and I bet she would find the stories of the iterations of what am I supposed to do? It's in this bag kind of stuff very engaging. I'm willing to bet you didn't have a packaging engineer on your team.
No, we didn't have a lot of the classical engineers on the team. It was kind of it was an interesting journey, but when you do it, with a small team, you learn so much. I mean, it's one of those things, waking up at 7 a.m. and working till 2 a.m. every day for a good 5-6 years, maybe even more than that. Now things are kind of under control. Manufacturing's flowing. It's pretty good, but I remember those days, and I would never trade them in. It was just a wonderful experience, and an amazing team that brought this to market.
Jan
George
writes, it also means they probably spent too much money or not enough on their packaging. I have to say I'm really intrigued because I think the risk profile, your risk profile, and what you were willing to do to get this thing off the ground is extraordinary. I have to imagine there were some years where your very patient wife was like, are you sure about this, honey? Because, when are we going to start to see some of the money come in?
It's an expensive endeavor. So a typical class 2 is about 60 million. From ideation through the approval, and that's not considering the clinical evidence, building that.
Let me stop you for a moment. I believe you're FDA cleared, not approved.
Cleared, correct. Yeah, correct. Sorry,
right,
cleared.
Cleared. Okay.
Yeah, so the typical class 2 is going to run around 60 million, right? That for a new technology, and that's an expensive endeavor, but you build up the IP portfolio. You don't do it because you want to be a billionaire, right? You do it because you're innovative and you want to improve healthcare. You kind of go into it under that auspice.
You have to support your family.
But you have to support your family, exactly. So, yeah, it was a long journey. It's still a journey, but it's helping people.
40 families relying on you at least. So God bless you.
Well, so that's the other cool thing that we always joke about, and it's not really a joke, but we talk about it often. There's so many medical device manufacturers now shipping overseas. And you see it. They're looking for cheaper labor, and they're going through struggles. all of our manufacturing is here in the United States. So it was created here in the United States. All of our manufacturing is in the United States. We have four manufacturing lines that produce this product. We have the disposable lines and like the hardware lines. And that's something that we're really proud of, because even we're just extending our lines even more out of COVID. Things are, there's more people getting SAMs, we're helping more patients. So we keep on adding, and you hear about people, leaving while we're trying to add and grow here. So that's a rewarding thing for the people we care for and our employees, and the supply chain. The supply chain, you're supporting a lot of people too. So that's kind of one of the benefits of commercialization.
Speaking of supply chain, did you have any major disruption due to COVID?
We did, from a standpoint on timing of our sub-assemblies. So a lot of the PCBAs and hardware, like those chips, even though we build all of our boards here stateside, the supply chain, some of them are extended out 60. Recently, I think they told me it was like almost a year on some of the components, like the new components coming out of the silica out of Japan, etc. So it is a challenge to make sure you're sourcing the raw components, even to build your boards that go inside the devices. That's probably been the biggest, not disruption, but challenge to address from a manufacturing standpoint for us.
Jan's just returning from a voyage to Mars, and I just bring her on quickly. I could have read it, but I suspect you might choose to follow up with her. Jan, you want to just tell them what you wrote me?
Oh, I don't know if you've heard of ISO standards, but they're international standards. They are developing a new standard on packaging for non-sterile medical devices. I'm not clear how they're doing it for active components, but I know that that's going to affect people. So I'm trying to keep an eye on it. We're collecting comments now and trying to influence what's happening from the US with this standard to keep it from being too onerous. But Korea and Japan has this little thing going on, and we're having a little trouble getting through the hard heads there. So just be careful.
Thank you, Jan. Rick, Dwayne, did you find your?
Yeah, I was curious. I wanted to make sure I didn't misspeak. Have you looked into the self-funded reimbursement market as well? Companies that kind of manage their own healthcare almost.
It's our emerging market for us. It's actually growing very quickly. So it's called self-insured, and a lot, it goes into the kind of the workplace injury environment. And these are, you're in manufacturing, or you're moving boxes, or a lot of the airlines, right? Everything's picking up again, moving luggage. When they get injured, these organizations a lot of them are self-insured, meaning they're covering their own costs for their employees, and it actually saves them a lot of money. And it turns out these self-insured organizations are usually managed by third-party administrators. So they actually partner with someone to help manage their money, but they're bankrolling the policy for their employees. And absolutely, Dwayne, we actually educate medical directors at the larger organizations, Caterpillar, United Airlines, et cetera. We're always educating. And then they typically roll out what's called these sort of pilot programs within their facilities, where I'm going to digress a little bit. So you get injured on the job at these bigger organizations. They usually have medical centers where the patients go to get triaged to see how they should be treated, if they need an expert or something that they can manage on their own. In that case, if they can get physical therapy and SAM and return to work in 2 to 4 weeks, versus sitting at home and being out of work for 4 weeks and going to get your medical expert to review it for another 4 weeks, the faster you get these patients back to work feeling better, it's psychosocially better, it's economically better, and for the patient, their overall quality is better. So most people want to work. It sucks when you're injured and you're not at work. So we've been working with a lot of those to educate them on it. And the health economics, this always blows my mind. When for 50% of injuries, like these are overuse injuries, back strains, tendinopathies, rotator cuff injuries in the workplace, those injuries typically cost around $40,000 to $60,000 for the out of work expenses, the medical expenses, and then the legal expenses. So if you can actually curve that and treat more effectively up front and get them back to work in 2, 4, 6 weeks, you're saving tens of thousands of dollars, and all of these self-insured organizations are fully supportive of it. And then the last thing they're doing is they're more innovative than the classical insurance, because they're paying it out of their pocket. They're looking for a solution. They're willing to do pilots, and pilots for them, they demonstrate 50 of their employees. 50 times $50,000, we're talking about big money pretty quickly. So it's a great, self-insured are a great group of people to educate on the technology.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, George. There's not many companies that are able to take advantage of that. I mean, there's like a handful of them, but it's most classic medical devices. It's like a parallel path. So that's pretty cool. You're taking advantage of that.
We
You've been
kind
extremely
of stumbled
patient.
on it. And when I say we stumbled on it, so the first people to cover our device and buy SAM were the professional athletes, people who had the means to return. Every day they were off the field, we're talking about millions of dollars. So by healing quickly and returning back to work, it was like a no-brainer. This couple $1,000s, no-brainer. And then that moved us into the workplace injury and the other areas where it's still a no-brainer for $50,000 versus 50 versus 6,000. What are you going to pay?
So what's the hang up with regular, with classic reimbursement? I mean, you hate to be like a conspiracy theory and things like that, but it seems like large pharma might have a hand in this.
Let me interject a moment, George. Just a little housekeeping.
Yeah.
Rick, I brought you on like, I don't know, 15 minutes ago and I've basically blown you off. And I'm going to make it even worse by taking you off the screen because I have a whole bunch of questions in this vein that isn't your question. So I'm going to spare you and but I'll invite you back later. I want to jump on what Dwayne just said, because when I asked you what should we call this talk today, you said demand standoff between physicians and insurance companies over innovative medical technology. So yeah, let's go there. And that's why, Rick, I'll see you in a little bit.
All right, so I don't think that there's conspiracy theory. Realistically, it's a slow process. Change takes time, and the more people using it, the more people are. It's little steps. I mean, we just got medical professionals finally coming together as a group, saying this is working for our patients. We believe in it. That was that 2021 article by professional athletic trainers. It takes the masses to sort of shift this big wheel, and this wheel is huge. The healthcare wheel. I mean, we're not even a spigot on the wheel. We're kind of like a little particle, So we're just trying.
We are in the tipping point of, to borrow Malcolm's terminology, that you hit that threshold and people are like, oh, you haven't heard of SAM and this type of technology? Where have you been? Type of thing.
Right.
When do you project? Are we looking at another handful of years, maybe another decade? When do you think this thing is everywhere, hopefully?
Oh, seems like it's getting nearer and nearer. So, everything's kind of going like hockey stick now, right? It was really, really slow, and now more use. So I don't know. It's
you have a
hard to
razor
say.
and blade model, or it's 6,000 one time and you have the system to use forever? You must have to replace the pads or something.
Yeah, so you usually get the a subscription, like the device plus a treatment regime for about 2 months. With the typical treatment that will resolve most overuse injuries and resolve most chronic, like chronic tendinopathy. Yeah, so you get 8 weeks is pretty much more than enough with the technology. With patients who have chronic, like our veteran patient population and Medicare beneficiary patient population, they're dealing with more like osteoarthritis of the knee, which is an inflammatory-based disease state. They'll use the treatment regime for 8 weeks. It will inhibit it, and then they may not have to use it again for another, 3 or 4 months, and then they redo the treatment regime.
So the patient
So
keeps the device?
Go ahead.
Patient keeps the device?
Correct, yep.
So I'm thinking of another friend in the network who created a device that is the first remote patient monitoring device for urology.
Mm-hmm.
And he sends the patient home and they do their voiding and their testing and their automatic documentation through RFID chips and the like, and then it is returned to the physician. Is that anything that you've ever considered, worth considering, or this is simply more profitable and it's impractical to have someone use it and then return it? Because if it's really just the pads that are going to be replaced, clearly disposable, I'm thinking for $6,000, does every patient who has a temporary thing need to keep it on their shelf forever now that they did their 2-month regime and they never needed it again?
So a lot of our patients will actually use this on other areas after their other conditions resolved.
I'll give a prescription for that.
What's that?
Do they need a prescription for that?
So if you get another order from your doctor and you want your patches covered, absolutely.
But now my
So
neck hurts and I'm gonna use that and I have to ask my,
doctor
yeah.
for more patches, correct? And you need a prescription to get it processed through your insurance carrier. It's kind of the pathway. Once you have the device, technically you don't need another prescription, right? You got your device. But in order to have it, processed via your insurance carrier, you're going to have to provide medical notes. Doctor's going to say, I need to prescribe more patches because X, Y, Z, and then that gets reimbursed through the insurance process. So it all is sort of, the prescription is the start, the kickoff of the reimbursement process.
It sounds to me as though you've got a minor in reimbursement at this point, even though that wasn't your field of study. I do have the definitive guy if you ever want to bounce ideas off of.
Yeah, and it evolves so quickly. So, Joe, we'd always appreciate if there's a good network person that is familiar with reimbursement and each market its own, the government insurance, work-related injury insurance. There's so many segments. And then what's interesting too is this whole, health savings accounts now. There's a lot of people that have HSA accounts. How that works into the equation for people who, need SAM or want to talk about SAM, have that conversation with their doctor. Is it appropriate for me? And if they're not currently, if their current benefits don't cover SAM, can they use their HSA account to, cover some of the costs associated with it?
I'm going to send you in LinkedIn, where we're connected, a link to Nick Anderson. He's my reimbursement guy. And I'll also put you in touch with Jose, who's came on earlier with mobile connected medical devices. It might be a good resource, and Jan for packaging. And if there are other folks on the call who have an angle that they feel that they can be helpful for George, that's what we're here for. I'm on your LinkedIn page because I was intrigued by your headline, which you did very nicely. You say you're CEO and president of ZetrOz Systems, and then you write global health and policy initiatives. It's almost like something else. I think you did intend it that way. What did you mean when you put it that way?
So we look to bring this technology to the globe, and more importantly, I'm into just healthcare and improving care for patients. So I try to do mentorship opportunities with students, do educational initiatives with universities, and we try to move the needle forward with medical policy. So we're currently working with our state senators and government on what's called the No Pain Act. And have you guys talked about the No Pain Act at all in this? Okay, so the No Pain Act it got halted in the last Congress. It's going to be initiated again, but it looks to bring new innovation and new technologies to reduce opioids and reduce surgical costs and improve care for patients. And it kind of works under that model with most hospital systems now, there's fixed pricing, right? So if you need a joint replacement, it's going to be X amount of dollars, $10,000 to cover all the therapies, the anesthesia, the surgical costs, the out care, patient costs, et cetera. And what that leaves, it leads to stagnation of innovation, because if there's new technology that might cost more, i.e. like a SAM device, wow, that's a lot of money to take out of our $10,000 chunk to do this procedure. So what the No Pain Act is, it allows for new FDA-approved, clinically valid innovation to have separate payment coverage post-operatively for these types of conditions. And it's to reduce the need for opioids, reduce the needs for opioids, and provide new solutions. So I guess that's kind of where the policy comes in. I love moving the needle forward, not only for what I'm doing and our company, but also just the innovation in itself. Even if it is more expensive, right? It's going to reduce healthcare risks, and it's going to give overall better quality of life for patients. That's why we do innovation. Sometimes it's not cheaper. Sometimes it's a lot more expensive, but that's okay. That's it's medical innovation needs to happen, and we need to shape the way we treat patients and improve society. So hopefully that's a little tidbit of why global health and policy initiatives.
It is, but you put it there. Do you hope to? Ridiculous. My house cleaner is here. I'm going to have to get the door. You put global health and policy initiatives there. Are you inviting people to reach out to you to talk about those things?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If people want to be involved with any of these activities from a government standpoint, people who want to be involved in even extending, new technologies. One thing, so at Cornell, we learned that there's major disparities, right, in healthcare access, even in the United States, but also across the globe. So one of the recent things we've been working on is we've even worked with some of our counterparts in Venezuela and in other South American countries to bring medical innovation to countries that would otherwise not even have it. So I think the cool thing, we did a big donation of SAM devices to a rehab center through our insurance partners. And you hear these stories. I think if you look at our LinkedIn post, you'll see one of the hospitals who uses our SAM devices. And they're so, thankful because we brought American innovation to them that they haven't seen anything like this ever before. And they're actually healing their patients in sort of countries that wouldn't have the ability to do it. So I'm really, it just makes me happy and excited to do these types of things. And I'm always interested in collaborating with other partners and sharing what we're working on if there's a way to help other people as well.
Thank you. Rick, you've been very, very patient. And you're on mute.
There we go.
Every week he forgets to.
Well, it's tradition.
Go ahead.
Okay, so a lot of times when an engineer comes into a doctor's office, with some injury, it's kind of, you get the same eye roll when you show up for jury duty. They don't want us. And so it's kind of like, it's even worse when you end up being the foreman of a jury. That's even funner. And so they're always afraid I guess the doctors are always thinking, man, he's going to tell me how to do my job. So I'm trying to think, I happen to be on a kind of insurance where we end up paying about half of what everybody does. I mean, it actually ends up costing half. And so rotator cuff, got that taken care of, two major things severed, and they got it all done. And it's going to be about $20,000. Okay. So about half of what it would have been. And so I'm kind of a worst case if I'm trying to justify something, because if it was $40,000, you could go, well, another $6,000. That's not that big a deal, but this is over 25% increase, right? So my question is, let's say that I go in, since I haven't stopped mountain biking, this is probably not my last injury. So when I go in with something like that, what are the best ways? I mean, do you even have a package you can send me on this? What are the best ways to describe a need threshold where it's this bad, therefore it could justify something like this? Oh, by the way, the people who do my insurance are great at letting me pick everything, but I still have to explain everything. And so what is the threshold for that? And is there a way I could explain that to them? Secondly, as far as any kind of scholarly type review materials, stuff so they would not have to look it up. Because he may say, well, I really don't know what that is. And the third thing is there any material on benefits demonstrated and expected, with some documentation that relates the physical benefits with possible monetary benefits from being able to get back into action? Even if you're somewhat of a sedentary person like me, I do all my great work behind a desk, pretty much, or walking around a factory. And so I've got, I did great on PT, kind of graduated earlier, but if shoulders, it's going to be like a year until it's great, maybe. And so,
Rick,
could it help?
May I guide you to,
and how do I explain it?
Yeah, to your question, yeah.
All right, so there's three questions there. The first one, we'll start with the last one, which is how do you explain it for your shoulder and the timing. The other one was insurance, right? How do you get their insurance to cover it for you? And then the third one is, I kind of maybe lost the third one, but all right, so we'll do the first
one. Those.
All right, so back to your shoulder.
What you have.
We have so many patients like you that had the shoulder, and they have either, some of them actually get frozen shoulder if they're not using it enough. Oh, it goes back to your mountain biker. Let me retract. Stay active. Definitely stay active. Even if once you stop being active, it's a slippery slope. We've seen it many times. So keep your activity level up as much as possible.
I work out the shoulder every day. So absolutely, yeah.
All right, and then back to the expected outcomes for a rotator cuff. With SAM treatment, within the first week, you're going to have improved range of motion. Even the first treatment, because you get that vigorous, it's called vigorous diathermy, you're actually creating DP. It's just going to feel loose. But by using it daily, you'll get more range of motion. You're a physical therapist. If you're going to PT still once a week or twice a week, they'll measure your range of motion. And a study by Best and colleagues, patients had, I think it was like a 50% or 20 to 50% improved range of motion on the study pretty quickly. So you'll get more range of motion. More range of motion and less pain during PT actually improves your physical therapy rehab too. A lot of patients, they stagnate in PT because it hurts too much. So if you're healing at home and then going to PT, it actually will accelerate your rehabilitation process as well. So don't think about a year. Think about, hey, maybe this is going to be a 2-month initiative with Sam and PT. That's how I would be thinking about it. And then finally, and does that make sense, right? If you're in less pain and you're healing at home, and when you go to PT, you're going to get more benefit from physical therapy, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And then the last thing with explaining it to your insurance carrier, it goes into your treatment plan. So all these insurance carriers now, they want to see a treatment plan for Rick. Rick had this. This is what he's dealing with. This is where he's starting his stagnation. And we don't want to see Rick in a year here. We want to see Rick in 6 months here, right? And that's why Sam's being integrated into your treatment plan. You might even get some ultrasound therapy at the physical therapist saying, hey, he's really responding to ultrasound therapy. Geez, I want to prescribe this home use FDA cleared multi-hour ultrasound device for home use. Perfect. That works into your treatment plan. And then every next treatment, when you get your reorder of patches, your doctor is going to say, this is what I've accomplished with Rick. He's improved so much more because of that treatment. So I need more patches for him. So that's kind of the, I don't want to say the insurance game, but the process. They want to see that it's clinically validated. They want to see that it's going to change your treatment trajectory. And they want to show real time as you're doing the treatment that you're improving on it. And that actually helps everyone to build more confidence in it too, because every script that they approve, right, and the doctor's coming back saying, wow, my patient, has 20% more mobility, reduced pain, better quality of life. That's all check marks to build more confidence in technology, not for you, not only for your doctor, but also for the carrier who's covering it.
Okay.
For that.
So this works. I was looking through your site, everything from knee replacements to just pretty much everything.
Yeah. So great thing. It's not magical. All right. And that's where it's not a copper sock. It's not a pain blocker. Right? It's not that. Yeah. Yep. It needs to be applied to, and if you have non-specific pain, Sam's not going to help you. Right. You need to have a target lesion that can be, by stimulating angiogenesis, stimulating cellular proliferation, stimulating mass transfer into the tissue, will help the remodeling process or flush out the inflammatory milieu. So in the case of a rotator cuff repair, right, you still have inflammation, you have probably calcifications, you probably have that integration of that tendon into the bony bone tendon matrix. Sam's going to stimulate that remodeling, improve tendon integration. It's going to allow for tenoneocyte remodeling and overall improve range of motion and pain reduction for actually more additional PT. So you have a great condition. Arthritis is another great condition, right? You have an inflammatory response in the body. We're actually in the process of demonstrating a longitudinal study for disease modification, but right now it's more for pain and improved mobility. But when you hit that inflammatory cascade, what happens? You reduce the degradation in your joint space. So again, another good condition for Sam. But if it's like fibromyalgia or a headache, that's not a Sam treatment.
No, it's not a nerve condition.
Put your LinkedIn link in the chat box for everyone. And if you are looking for him, because George Lewis is going to be a little bit more common among the names, George K. Lewis Jr., PhD. That's who you're looking for. Thank you, Rick. Lucky for us, Nick Anderson jumped on, and he's that reimbursement dude about whom I was speaking earlier. If you take yourself off mute, so I can berate you, because where is your LinkedIn profile? You took your page down?
Yeah, I needed time away from social media, and so now I have none, and my blood pressure is better, and the sun's shining, and the universe.
I'm just glad I have a means to get you, but here's a piece of trivia, because I was writing Nick, Nicholas C., all of these, like Nick Anderson. So finally I went into Sales Navigator to look for Nicholas Anderson. There were 0, and I was like, okay, maybe you don't have an H in your name. I don't know. So I just looked under Anderson. Guess how many First Connection Andersons I have?
300.
No, a tenth of that, 32, which I think is still pretty significant. Yeah. For someone who didn't go to school for health economics, George knows a lot. So I can only speculate what entertainment the two of you could geek out about. He even puts global health and policy initiatives in his headline, even though for his day job, he leads a 40-person company selling a medical device. So I just thought it'd be a good introduction. So
yeah, this is great. And I'm sorry I missed the first 45 minutes. I was in a meeting. So I'm sorry I missed the whole big discussion.
just quickly, when we met, you were the guy at Intermountain Health Systems who made the recommendation whether or not to accept or deny coverage on medical devices. And you're now a big muckety muck over at Boston Scientific.
Yeah. So yeah, I was at Intermountain for 7 years, and in fact, my last meeting on this job over here versus this job, I mentioned this, that it's kind of a joke, the Intermountain Healthcare being what it is. You know, it's supposed to be this like model of healthcare, which is between me and you and the other 100 people on this call, a sort of a joke. Intermountain Healthcare captures all the benefit of us Latter-day Saints that don't drink, don't smoke. We get married when we're 21. We have a kid when we're 22. We have another kid when we're 23. And all the health benefits that come with a super, you know, clean living life. And you've all seen the Broadway musical. That the Intermountain fortuitously is positioned to capture all of that benefit. And then they say, look at what we did. And it's like, no, you didn't. That oh, can you hear me okay, Joe?
Yeah, you froze, but we can hear you.
Okay, everything's frozen. So anyway, Intermountain did do a lot right by standardizing care and saying, we get in a head-on collision, Joe gets an MRI, so does Nick. You know, where it used to be, I don't know, I want him to get an MRI. Well, I don't know, I want this guy to get a CT. And so Intermountain did do a lot right, but frankly, they're lucky to be based in Utah. If they were based in the bayous of Louisiana, all those.
Now,
Just saying it.
I know you're all very healthy, clean living people, but let's not insult other
So
folks.
look at the map. There's always a heat map, and Louisiana's on fire when it comes to diabetes or anything. So I don't know. For Intermountain being what it is, they should have had 50 Nick Andersons doing health economics and health.
There are 50 Nick Andersons. That's why I couldn't find you.
32, yeah. But all 32 of those guys should be working for Intermountain saying, hey, you know, Cologuard, bad, Eurolift, good, you know, technology works, doesn't work. But they had one snot-nosed kid doing all of these tech assessments all those years. And I think I did a good job, but, you know, insurance companies, the big ones, Aetna, Cigna, those guys have big teams of people working out these things to say, here's what the data says versus here's what the physician says. You know, physicians buy off of clinical validity. You know, a 2% improvement in tissue bone integration, you know, a 7% this, where insurance companies go, that's clinical validity, guys. We don't reimburse for clinical validity. We reimburse for clinical utility. You know, who cares if the bone tissue matrix improves by 2%? And then the provider or the manufacturer has to say, well, here's why you care, because that decreases revision rates by 40% in a year. And you go, oh, why didn't you tell me that? That's what I care about. That's the stuff for which I reimburse. So anyway, that's what I did all those years. And now I do it over here in this world and still as a consultant on the side.
George, I suspect that by joining us today, you are now on the list that would get told about future weeks. This is an ongoing series, and Nick is our presenter on May 21st, so 3 weeks from today, with a health economic number we can all love. So if busy as you are, you can find your way to joining us again in 3 weeks. I think you'll be entertained in a minute.
Yeah, but you can do Zoom anywhere now, right? You got it on your cell phone, you got it on your iWatch, so
Thank you, Nick.
Zooming's easy. I prefer not Zooming at a desk, but you know.
Yeah, I think you're a runner, yeah?
Yes, I like running, hockey. I played hockey last night, which was great. First time back, pandemic style.
Your LinkedIn photo screams runner.
Yeah, I like running. I like outdoor activity, you know, swimming, running, hockey, basketball.
I'm more of an indoor nap and movies guy myself, but I make up for it in other ways. George, boy, I'm so glad I reached out to you. I really enjoyed this and I learned a lot. Frankly, I could keep you on for another hour just to talk about the chicken and the egg of how to socialize your technology. And you know, you mentioned the 60 million number as being the standard. I hesitate to ask how much went into yours. And you mentioned a network of 500 people repping you. You know, is it all commission based? And so, you know, no sale, no money, and that's fine. And if so, how motivated are they to really keep you top of mind and pushing your product? Maybe I'll have to have you back in a future week.
Lots of challenges that we all face to figure out that magical or a couple models that allow it to be mainstreamed, right? It's a long process.
Actually, the 2 weeks after Nick, my friend Scott Nelson is going to be speaking, and his topic is called "How to Successfully Commercialize a Class 2 Medical Device Entirely Direct to Consumer."
Hey, that sounds exciting.
So I don't know, maybe you join premium and we'll become buds. I'd like that. George
Very
Lewis,
cool.
everyone. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next week. George, profound
Thanks for
thanks.
having me, Joe. Appreciate it.
Find me on LinkedIn and let's continue talking.
Absolutely. Have a great day. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.